Hey, welcome to Green's analysis of Ode to My Socks. This poem is by Pablo Neruda, and it's one of my favorite of his odes, partly maybe because I'm a sock knitter myself and I enjoy relating to the appreciation, but also just because I think it's really very quintessential in that he is writing about how much he loves socks on the one hand, but also writing about bigger things like beauty and usefulness in the world. And I also love it just because it is really weird. So let's have a listen. Mara Mori brought me a pair of socks, which she knitted herself with her sheep herder's hands, two socks as soft as rabbits. I slipped my feet into them as though into two cases knitted with threads of twilight and goatskin. Violet socks. My feet were two fish made of wool, two long sharks, sea blue, shot through by one golden thread, two immense blackbirds, two cannons. My feet were honored this way by these heavenly socks. They were so handsome. For the first time, my feet seemed to me unacceptable, like two decrepit firemen unworthy of that woven fire, of those glowing socks. Nevertheless, I resisted the sharp temptation to save them somewhere, as schoolboys keep fireflies, as learned men collect sacred texts. I resisted the mad impulse to put them into a golden cage, and each day give them birdseed and pieces of pink melon. Like explorers in the jungle who hand over the very rare green deer to the spit and eat it with remorse, I stretched out my feet and pulled on the magnificent socks and then my shoes. The moral of my ode is this: beauty is twice beauty, and what is good is doubly good when it is a matter of two socks made of wool in winter. So, in my interpretation of this poem, is that Neruda is showing us that life is better when we appreciate the beauty, the joy, the usefulness of handmade things. And the speaker's childlike joy in this poem, in his hand knit socks, is manifested in this series of incongruous yet pretty intense images of animals, the elements, war, and hunting. In addition to the plethora of figurative language, Neruda masterfully employs lineation and a personal diction to convey his frank theme. Let's look at it a little bit more closely, just a few chunks here. So, the poem establishes the moment in 5 lines. The speaker has received a pair of handmade socks, described somewhat conventionally with the simile as soft as rabbits, and then it gets weird. Short lineation, so we see um, two cases knitted with threads of twilight and goatskin. So this strange is the first of many strange images, and it kind of connotes magic on the one hand and very practical fabrics on the other. From this twilight and goatskin, we go to violence and fish and sharks and blackbirds. The everyday objects are now given the weight of violence and cannons, developing the strength of the speaker's feeling of admiration and the reverence for the socks, of course, as one expects from an ode. All that emotion leads to a complication. Are these socks going to be too pretty to wear? In comparison to the extreme beauty that has been established, the speaker worries that his feet are too ugly, with unacceptable and unworthy each getting their own line for the woven fire. The vehicle of fire pulls in more elements imagery with its connotations of heat and beauty. And now there's movement towards the meaning. The tension increases as the speaker realizes he can't save up the socks like fireflies or books or caged birds. The figurative language again continues to pile on in a bizarre variety emphasized by the lineation. There's more tension created as he repeats, I resisted. Having successfully resisted the temptation, the The speaker reluctantly decides to put on the socks with perhaps the strangest simile so far, that of the explorers eating the green deer. I love the return to the practical and personal tone from the opening lines with socks and then my shoes. Which brings us to the meaning, which is now explicitly stated by the speaker and emphasized by the one word lines of beauty and good. He's left the vivid images behind in order to state plainly the significance of the handmade objects. Neruda's choice to make the last two lines even more practical, made of wool in winter, emphasizes the usefulness of the item. The tone becomes almost reverent after the riot of images preceding, and in order to truly emphasize this moral, the speaker's joy and wonder in a simple pair of socks can inspire the audience to appreciate the everyday objects around them, especially the ones that are handmade. Thanks for listening.